I said to William that I write in a box, so I know how to stay within my time. So here it is. Because I have 5 to 7 minutes, and I promise to stay within the time, I'm going to make these points in bullet form, as we say in our business. I'm not going to elaborate much on them. By the way, reference was made to the 1983 matter about the community that didn't want the television. I remember that so well because we had a writer in those days, and I never met the person, but some of you may know who she is. I didn't. Her name was Georgina. Known to, but I didn't know her. But for a number of years, she wrote for us from the North. And I specifically remember that column. She had a weekly column, and then a longer story about the issue involving the arrival of television and under what circumstances. It was a very evocative story. Point number one, and these are impressionistic on my part. I think that the Inuit, relative to other Aboriginal groups in the country, have been better led and had a better press in the so-called South than the other Aboriginal organizations. I think that the Inuit have been very lucky in the kind of people like Mary Simon and John Emigwalik and Nellie Cornway and Rosemary Kuptana and Sheila Watt-Cloutier and Zebedee Nungat and many others who have been able to express and explain the Inuit case, if I can put it that way, in a comprehensible way to people who are themselves not Inuit. That's not an easy thing to do, and to do it in a way that is constructive, non-confrontational, and understood. And that's an art, believe me, and I think the Inuit community has been very fortunate in having those kinds of people speaking on their behalf, and they've made a favorable impact on public opinion through the media in the South. That's point one. Point two is a more difficult point. You're not going to necessarily appreciate me saying this. In 1998, the Inuit leadership came to Ottawa and produced a document about the problems, social and economic, that they faced in the North. And we reported it, and we put it on the front page, and I wrote a column about it. We used all, I have the column right here, we used all the material that was presented by the Inuit leadership to the government, and of course a number of the statistics in it weren't pretty. Well, I mean the Globe and Mail, got, what's the polite way of putting it? I mean, we got horsewhipped in the northern media, including on the CBC up north, such that, and I don't usually do this, I actually went on the media up north and I said, look, you're shooting the piano player here. These are not numbers we've invented. These are ones that you yourself have put to the government in order to make a case for additional financial resources to run the new territory. There was a letter that we published in the paper from the head of one of the Nunavut business organizations, who said, I'm not contesting the validity of the data, although the presentation left something to be desired. I assume he meant it was on the front page. And he said, I was disappointed the Globe chose to focus its vision microscopically on shock value statistics. Remember, these aren't our stats. These were the Inuit community stats, when a wide-angle lens would have allowed you to give your readers a better fix on the scope of what we're doing. So, subsequent to that, in 2009, as you all know, there was a report done by North Sky Consulting Group and another report done by Tom Berger. And the numbers in those reports of social and economic challenges didn't frankly indicate that there'd been the kind of progress in the intervening 10 years that I'm sure everybody up north wanted. Now, you get shot at as the piano player when you report these reports. Nobody likes to have these kinds of reports in the public domain. Our job is to report them as fairly and contextually as we can, but I want to suggest to you that unpleasant as numbers like these are, and unpleasant as it is to have them in the public domain, including in the national media, it is the essential way by which this information gets communicated to people, and it is the best way to draw attention not just outside a community but inside a community to these problems. So as Whit Fraser was just saying a little bit more delicately, don't shoot the piano player. The media actually, although it's uncomfortable, is reflecting matters that the community itself needs to talk about and is talking about and needs to have drawn to everybody's attention. Third point I'd make is that the media world has changed immensely in a way that I think is challenging but also presents an opportunity to the Inuit. We are now consumed by the web. Believe me, we're consumed by the web. Our reporters are now glorified wire service reporters. If this speech were worthy of being reported, and I'm sure it's not, it would be reported within 2 or 3 minutes or 5 on the web. And I believe that most of the stories in the Arctic, for a non-Arctic audience, are of a narrative variety. They take time, they take context, they take a lot of reporting. They don't lend themselves to the kind of web-based reporting that we need today. However, the flip side of this is that social media is an extremely powerful tool that overcomes distance in a way that couldn't be overcome before. Going north takes money and takes time, and I regret to tell you that in the media these days, budgets are being cut everywhere. We're not covering a lot of the Prime Minister's foreign trips these days, and we're one of the better off media in the country. Same thing is true of the television networks. But social media gives you a chance to overcome that. I urge you to think very seriously about that. And the last point I'd make, and I worry a bit for the Inuit on this, I genuinely do. You all know better than I do how the geography of your area is changing. Climate change is a preoccupation of mine. The Arctic is therefore, because of climate change, already receiving and will receive exponentially more attention. But it's going to receive attention, I fear, from the point of view of foreign policy, defense policy, resource exploration and exploitation, transportation opportunities, and pollution, and climate change. And the Inuit are central to all of those angles, as it were. And I worry about the fact that their interests, their concerns might be lost as people focus on all of these other angles on this emerging story. And by the way, just a last editorial point, I thought it very ironic when the Prime Minister was up there last year, as he makes his annual trip, which is fine. He was standing on an ice floe. Prime Minister is very big on photo ops, and he spoke about various things. But you know, he's never in 6 years given one full speech on climate change on Canadian soil, not one. And I looked at that picture and I said, the reason that chunk of ice is floating around out there is because of climate change. It would be useful if you took that photo op as a chance to say, I'm standing on an ice floe. The reason is because of climate change. I'd like to talk to you about it. Didn't happen. Thank you.